and welcome to another episode of Building Minnesota RØKKR. It is officially mid-season now in the Call of Duty League, and so us, a professional Call of Duty team, we're syncing up with the coaches this episode. So as usual, you have me, Ashley, aka Midnight, director of content here at Minnesota RØKKR. We've got Brett Diamond, the COO, the man, the myth, the legend. And then, of course, we have head coach Brian Saintt is on with us today. And then assistant coach and lead analyst Jake, aka Reppin. Woo! What an intro. I honestly nailed that. I'm proud of me. How are you guys today, though? How's your quarantine pandemic been going? I know you guys you're just over kind of living by the facility there, hanging out, gaming, coaching. How has it been for you guys?
Every day is the same at this point. Every day's a Monday.
Every day's a Monday.
It's like, it's weird having off days in quarantine because when the team's not playing, like I actually hate it because we have nothing to do.
You're like, what is my purpose?
So it's so hard, and like I already watch a lot of COD as is, and now I'm watching even more. So it's just like Brian and I started watching a lot of movies.
There you go.
I guess that's been a decent takeaway. Like before, we never really did that because we'd go to the facility, come back, go to the gym. We'd be tired from the gym. Maybe we'd we'd game with each other from across the room, but we were never like hanging out in the living room. I feel like we've done a lot more of that since quarantine. So like,
nice.
I guess that's a takeaway. But yeah, everything's kind of.
Are these new movies or movies you've seen before that you're going
just
back?
stuff on Netflix
all
and
of
Hulu.
like stuff we've seen before. I put Brian onto The Usual Suspects, so that's like a movie from 1996. And then we watched what was it called? Midsummer.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that
Midsummer
yet.
yesterday.
It's
So
good.
that movie's like, yeah, like watch it with someone. Don't go watching that movie by yourself. It's trippy.
It's scary, or just like I'm gonna think too much.
It's just like
thinking too much is not good.
It's like a cult-esque movie, and the cult's centered around a lot of psychedelic drugs. And when you're watching it, you feel like you're on the drug. Like the way the cinematography is so perfect that you feel like you're hallucinating with the person, with the character.
I didn't know it was like that. For some reason, I thought it was something
completely
different.
No, it was
like
one of the craziest horror type movies.
I was so uncomfortable. We had to wash that movie down with a comedy afterwards.
Yeah,
I don't think I would have been able to watch it in theaters, to be honest.
Yeah, me neither. I was very unwell.
Nice. So we wanted to do, like I said, kind of a mid-season check-in. We're now officially in the middle of the season here with the team. We've definitely had you on before, and I don't know if you guys actually listen to the podcast, but we gas you guys up almost every day or every time, every episode, just at the amount of work that you put in and how this team has developed from the beginning of the year. Obviously, we're coming off of a pretty toughest, I'll just come out and say it. It was our worst weekend of the season last weekend.
Sophomore slump, as some would say.
Yep, sophomore slump a little bit. We started off the first half of the season pretty hot, though. We're currently sitting at number 4 in the standings, not tied with anybody. Kind of give us a little bit of a rundown. I know we're in like a real weird time. Like obviously going from playing LAN every 2 weeks to now we are all, playing online. What's the biggest kind of difference been for you guys and the team going from, going to the facility every day, prepping together, and then flying to a LAN tournament to now everything's remote? Let me know kind of how that's been, and if there are any challenges, what are they?
It's definitely harder doing it this way, but we've played online pretty much fully in the past, years back. Even like the prior years when we were going to LAN events and everything, all practice was online and not at the facility or anything like that with everyone spread. So that part's still normal. It's just getting into the online tournament mindset that's the hard part, because there hasn't really been major online tournaments since like Call of Duty 4 MW2, when that was the main form of competitive play. So getting back into that mindset and dealing with all the issues there is the hard part. And I think online games are generally going to be a lot closer, because when you're playing online, running and gunning is the more so preferable play style when you have a lot of latency, camera issues, etc. So you can't really play as standard or pre-aimy online like you could on LAN.
Yeah, agreed. There's definitely a gameplay shift online. I mean, on top of that, I think it's almost a subconscious thing. So a lot of players online is practice time, and LAN is when there's no excuses. You don't complain. You don't get mad at your teammates. You're there to win, right?
Yeah.
And when you shift to this online format and you're in this online tournament weekend and you lose a map, I think it's really hard for players to like snap out of it and be like, this isn't a scrim. Whereas on
Yeah.
LAN, no one's going to talk about it. It's move forward, next map sort of thing. Where online, you're so used to subconsciously giving feedback after a map, right? And you're so used to treating online as practice that I think you're gonna, or we've seen across the league that it's difficult for certain players to sort of detach themselves from that. So like there are definitely challenges involved, but I think we're overcoming them. And I think the main shift is what Brian said, just the increased speed at which the game is played online.
Yeah, especially
Let's
now with auto tac sprint kind of being the main meta for SMG players. People are just always moving around the map.
let's break
Why?
that down a little. Or Brett, go ahead, and I'll break it down a little bit more.
No, I think we're going to ask I probably was going to ask the same question, just in a little less nuanced form of what that means, and why that is functionally different.
I'll kind of lead it off with this. From my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, just from watching, it seems like the meta, which is kind of like the however the game shifts, whether it's updates or balancing, the meta is decided, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and now on LAN, it seemed like the meta for most teams was 3 subs and then 2 AR players. So you have your main AR and Assault, and then I believe it was Jerome or GodRX, aka Adam. We have 2 Adams, so his nickname is Jerome. But he would go back and forth between an M4 and a sub, but seemed to mostly run an M4. Now with online, it seems like because submachine gun players tend to challenge a lot harder, play a lot faster because they have an advantage in doing that online. It seems like most of the teams have gone, you know, 4 subs, 1 main AR. Talk a little bit about like if first of all, am I completely off or on? And what is your guys' take on that? How have we adjusted a bit to that?
No, I mean you're
So
not really. You can go.
uh, thank you. Um, uh, so I would say you're right. I think it's also worth noting that in our online tournaments, on LAN, we were fortunate enough to be on maps where Jerome could use a second AR.
Yeah,
I think you've seen a shift in some of our map pools since we've gotten online, which has forced Jerome into an additional sub.
yeah,
So that's part of the reason you've seen the shift.
makes
And
sense.
also, as like a COD game progresses, in one particular meta, teams really learn how to play the game. So typically, 1, 2, 3 teams really learn it, and then everyone else catches up. And once everyone catches up, the speed of the game is going to instantly increase because now people aren't respawning, coming back to life, and thinking, okay, what's the right play to make? Since everyone kind of finally knows how to play the game, they're spawning up and just instinctually going. So the speed at which the game increases, and I mean, Brian, you're probably way better at explaining like the granular details just in terms of online and like tick rate and why it's better to play quickly online. So if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you see it every year, especially last year. As the game progressed throughout the lifespan, the SMG meta became a lot more prevalent. I think last year in what was it, Black Ops 4, you saw a pretty strict like ICR Maddox, like 2 Maddox, 2 SMG meta. And then as it got toward the end of the year, a lot of teams were running 3 SMGs, 1 Maddox, one ICR, ACR, whatever it's called in that game. And just as teams learn, it's a lot easier to get more SMGs playing at a faster style on the map because you have a really good sense of what's going on at all times. And then, coupled with the online and how latency works, how SMG players get a bigger advantage online when they jump out and challenge, opposed to on land, there's less of a peeker's advantage, is what it's called in CS and a lot of other games.
Yeah, I think um, also sort of if you're able to play quickly and correctly, you're going to cause like absolute havoc for the other team. So there's going to be a point in the title where it's like who can play the fastest, because like if you could force the other team to be uncomfortable and just set the pace, you're putting yourself at such an advantage.
And we saw that early in the year, when FaZe kind of came out, they seemed to play the pace of the game much faster than other teams and correctly. But then it's always this game of catch up in competitive Call of Duty, or I guess in any competitive game where there's a shifting meta. But teams start to catch up to that. Like we caught up to that. We lost to them. We were a little bit outpaced, and then we came back. We played faster. We played fundamentally and beat them. We were the first team to beat them. We should get a trophy just for that. No, I'm just kidding. But we were able to make strides to come back, and now what I wanted to ask you guys about. I think I tweeted this during the tournament. The top 4 placements last weekend for the Florida home series online event. 3 of those 4 teams are, let's say it, in the bottom half of the standings, right? So what is that attributed to them freshening up their look, freshening up their rosters a little bit, plus the change to online's changing the pace of the game? Or are those teams genuinely catching up? There's that kind of mid-season, like, oh, I catch up here. It's all about trying to get ahead of the other teams with pacing and strategy. What do you guys attribute it to? Is it's online and they have a new look on their roster, or is it they're genuinely kicking ass and catching up?
With New York, I definitely think you can attribute a lot of it to the new look. Ever since they got Mac Melts, they've just been a significantly better team than they were prior. He was kind of the player that they needed to fit their role. They had, Zero and Accuracy, who were both, very slow, main AR style oriented players. And just getting rid of one of them and replacing them with a, really fast, young SMG player with a ton of raw skill just helped them a lot. Toronto, I believe, their first tournament with their new roster was the Dallas online event, and ever since they brought in medals and brought in Cammy, Bance, their lineup has definitely looked a lot better. People didn't really realize it at the Dallas event, but they actually played really well.
They did.
They beat Florida, went to a game 5 versus Dallas, and then barely lost to Florida again, who ended up winning that event. So they performed really well there, and we're kind of going under the radar going into this weekend. And then Optic, if they have all that talent on their team, I think getting Chino brings someone who's always going to be bringing good vibes in game and out of game, going to be hyping up everyone on the team, and I think that's kind of something that they needed to help them push through the hard times that they've been going through. And they damn well probably should have won the event.
Yep, I actually totally agree with Brian. I mean, we talked about it on an earlier podcast when I said the amateurs learned how to play the game quicker than most pro teams, like months back.
Mm-hmm.
Mac was on that. Mac was a part of that really good amateur team that just learned it. So, like Mac coming in with all the raw skill definitely and helped. And then he could also teach his team how to play the game, and the fact that they were able to trust him and implement his suggestions, I think, showed. Toronto has to have more game 5s than any team in the league, I feel.
Seriously,
they're taking every team the distance. Yeah, they've played the most maps. They're taking all these teams the distance. It's just they haven't been able to close out that game 5. But they've gone so under the radar from a fan perspective just because they haven't been winning the game 5s. But they've been taking teams, to game 4, game 5 in series consistently. And then Optic, for the people on those team, it Clayster said it time and time again, it's a matter of when, not if. And if it's not when, it's just any day of any given weekend, they could just all go off, and it's tough. They're all really, really talented people, and Chino's bringing great energy to that team now. So.
Yeah, I think it was only a matter of time before Optic kind of started clicking. I do still think they don't have everything that they need to push farther.
Mm-hmm.
But they've definitely improved. So for you guys, it is the new looks rather than online, or is it a combination? Like my question, and this is, I think Mac Meltz is an incredible player, and he's no doubt changed that roster. But if he's on the main stage on LAN, does he dominate as well as he does from the comfortability of his bedroom? I'm assuming. I'm wondering the psychology.
There's probably a slight regress in some of the really good SMG players that have been throwing up crazy stats online because you can't play as fast and get away with it in most scenarios. So you'll see like a slight dip off in KD and stuff like that, but it's not anything obscenely drastic. It's just that LAN brings a whole different environment, mindset, et cetera, et cetera. And he's played well in LAN at the first Minnesota Open.
Yeah, he won it, right?
He got second.
Second.
Singularity.
Didn't he win one though too with his team?
I don't think so.
I think that was the only one he played.
Yeah, I mean, they won some like online 1Ks and stuff. But I think yes, he'll be good on LAN. Probably, like Brian said, you might see a slight drop off just because of an SMG player. The issue is most people who are really good online are really good on LAN. The only exceptions are the people who can't sort of handle the pressure that LAN brings. So like when he first gets on the main stage, God forbid it's champs, there's going to be high stakes, high pressure. So it's kind of how he deals with the fans, how he deals with sitting down on main stage and looking out and just seeing everyone stare at him for the first time. I think will be a good test for him. But I mean, look, everyone's getting kills online that they wouldn't get on LAN. I mean, you saw it in the 5-5 against New York. Like MacMouths came out of sprint into Adam L triggering him with an AR from like 25 yards away and just deleted him off the map. Like Mac at the end of that, like later that night, was talking to me and goes, "I should not have gotten that kill." And the fact that the player himself is acknowledging that was an online kill, I don't think that's a testament to Mac at all. I think that's just the situation we're in where, random stuff like that happens. So I don't want to take away anything from him and say he's just an online player, but I do want to say we should wait and see how he handles the pressure.
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
And there's a reality for everybody with this situation where the rest of the regular season will be online, right? That's the situation we're in. There hasn't been anything announced about champs. I think everyone hopes that the environment allows us to have champs safely in a LAN environment.
Yeah.
But this season is online for
Yeah, and like shout out to him. I mean,
Yeah.
like getting into the league like this changes people's lives. I mean, all of these AMs, this is what they're dreaming for, to get picked up by a pro team. And I mean, he did it, and he's absolutely crushing it. He's putting up ridiculous numbers, and like online or LAN, like I'm not the type of person to hate on someone for like tasting success, and like he's absolutely crushing it. So shout out to that kid.
Yeah, he's playing really well. And I think, I mean, even like my question of how do you guys see that transferring to LAN, I think that's kind of just a general curiosity. Like I see all the time people replying to our tweets like, "Hey, like how do I get on the team? Like how do I do this? How do I join you?" And it's like it is such a bigger process than you would think, because you do
putting
have
in an application.
Yeah, you don't just like show me your YouTube channel and I'm like, there's
Brian and I get some good applications.
Yeah,
Yes.
I got a few emails here and there.
Will you be upset if I start tweeting you guys my gameplay clips? I'm going to do it regardless. Thank you in advance for the sub spot on the team. But no, like there's these amateur players that are like coming up, and we talked about it on the podcast last week with Benson,
Ben.
and we got some discourse on Twitter. There were some amateur players saying, "What are you talking about? Like, this is not the best time to be an amateur COD player." And I'm like, bro,
I'm gonna rant.
are you kidding me? The prize pool alone is more insane than it's ever been for an amateur player. There's literally another event that happens with the events that are happening.
Yeah, I feel like they have more. I feel like even in like the off weeks, there's like a big amateur event in those weeks. I feel like they have one every single weekend.
Yeah,
like.
and then like you're seeing that it's not even okay. Let's just say like that aside. Let's just say like the structure aside. And I'm not saying it's perfect. Listen, it could still develop and be better. It's not perfect. That's not what I'm saying. But this is the best time in history for COD to be an amateur player, because you're seeing it now. Like Mac Melts showed up to an amateur event, apparently his only one LAN event of the season in Minnesota, places second, gets his name recognized, gets picked up by a struggling team, and now they're a different team. And that's happening on LA Gorillas. You're seeing the evidence of this, that these players are getting picked up. So I think it's a good time.
I'm steaming at the head that amateur players are saying that. It might not be the most fair time to play as an amateur, but it's not the most fair time for anyone to play. Like the whole season's online. But Look, if you go back to the Xbox 360 days, like every single game that was on the 360, your party chat was limited to what, 7 people, 8 people?
Yup.
How many people
I
could
think it
be
was
in an
8.
Xbox Live party? 8?
8.
Eight.
All right, fine. So like pros typically only hang out with pros, and there's 8 people in there. You're never gonna get to talk to any of these guys. You're lucky if you get a scrim against them. There's 2 pro team speaks now. Like the team speak we practice in, like our good friends who are amateur players also practice in it. You have so much exposure to pro players. Like amateurs are in the team speak every night talking and playing with pros. They never had the opportunity to even like speak to one. Like they'd be lucky to get a scrim like once every 2 weeks against a pro team, and even then the pro team would use them as a warm-up scrim and not take it seriously. On top of that, there's way more prize pool than there has been in years prior, and like teams who are struggling are actively asking what amateur players are
Like,
good.
They're going
yeah.
off of their sub bench to get these amateur players. Like that's
Like if anything, this is the perfect time to be an AM because the league, like the subs are almost useless.
I mean, like look at the Chicago Huntsman AM event. I mean, Singularity won. They got to meet Scumpy and the boys.
Shut up.
yeah,
Did
come
you
on,
guys
guys.
see the Reddit post? Did you see? So like one of their really funny players who like has been a pro
I
prior,
saw it.
like gets on the COD Reddit and goes, "All right, I won. Can I meet Scumpy now?"
I don't even think they got their 2-hour coaching session with
With
Sender.
Troy. No, all jokes aside, I think the fact that league teams are disregarding their bench and going straight to the AM scene to pick up talent is point in itself
Speaks
why
volumes.
it's great to be an AM right now.
And obviously, I don't know the history of the amateur scene the way the three of you do, but I think it'll be interesting to watch how, with the new league structure, it evolves over time, right? And not necessarily this year or even next year, but when you have the professionalization of the system overall, over time, it will create an environment where, and you referenced it, you're already seeing it with teams going to the amateur scene to pick up those next players, but that will become more of a focus for teams over time. And I think even it's interesting. We talked a little bit about this on the podcast with Benson as well, and you guys can chime in on it from your perspective. But one of the things that I've always found interesting is that our guys weren't a group that had teamed together in the past, right? Obviously, Silly and Assault had this long history. But when we had Alex on the podcast, and you guys didn't need to hear this from him on the podcast, but when we had Alex on the podcast, he talked about coming to this team because he felt like it was the environment that was set up to win. And so that sort of mentality is certainly interesting, but would love you guys to just, now that we're halfway through the season, kind of look back at how that roster came together from your perspective, and that fact that, it wasn't just a bunch of guys that had played together in the past.
Right, you want to take it and I'll jump in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, going into the season, I was kind of bouncing around place to place, talking to Justin a bit, and he didn't really know what he wanted to do at the time because, Envy was very bad at the end of last year. He didn't know if Envy was going to, hold him and, like, keep him as a sub or anything like that. And then once everything started getting in motion, him and Adam have played together for a long time, even though they didn't have the best year last year and had some ups and downs. They both felt confident in each other. They both know them two performed well at champs, and RØKKR is a player that no one was looking at, which is crazy to me because I've been playing.
Mind blowing.
I've been playing with this kid for years, and then last year I think he really showed what he can actually do consistently. Ever since Anaheim, when E6 kind of had like their breakout top 6 tournament, he was a top performer in pretty much every category, and no one took note of that because he was never really networking himself, talking to all these, high-end pro players or anything like that. So they kind of formed that team of 3. It was just a matter of who to round out the roster with. And at that time, a lot of players were getting picked up. But we saw Alex was, kind of one of our top prospects. I've seen the kid play for a while. Was incredible in World War II. And going back to a game like this, which is a bit more boots on the ground than, last year, I thought he'd be a really good fit. So we kind of talked to him a little bit, we're able to work out a deal with him. And then we went into that who's going to be the fifth player that completes this team. We had a few options at the time. We weren't really sure who we were going to get. All we knew is that we wanted someone that's going to bring, a good mindset that everyone else in the team is bringing, and as well as being a fast, aggressive SMG player, because that was kind of the main thing we were lacking. So after exploring all our options, I think it turned out that ASIM was, what we collectively agreed on was our best choice. And, ever since we got him, that kid's been awesome. And I love the mindset and the attitude he brings in every day to practice. I never really even talked to him before at all until he signed here. And that kid's awesome.
Love Sim. Also, I mean, like Brian said, the first three were sort of no-brainers. You know what you're going to get out of them. The second, like Alex and Sim, through the roster process, when you're constructing it, it was like, all right, are we going to sign Alex or blank? Are we going to sign Sim or blank? They were two separate conversations, but at each time, like Brian was sort of just like this is who we want. If we have to pay a premium, do it, because this is what we're building off of. Like, these guys are young and they're going to be absolutely nutty. And so shout out to the talent acquisition expert in the top left-hand corner, Brian Baraska, for seeking out those two guys.
On the top left corner, you were like, "What if?"
Well, wait, are you not there? Are you not there?
The YouTube
we don't know. We don't know where
Brian
the other
in
is.
the bottom left. But yeah, shout out
that's
to
an edit.
he's right next to you.
But yeah, also to tie back into that, I definitely thought it was better to get players who are a bit on the younger side in their career and not kind of in the middle tail end. Because if you're getting someone who's 25, 26, they need to be super reliable. And I feel like just generally with how things are now, getting younger talent to round out a roster that already has a few older players is what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know Alex at all. I mean, Alex,
Same.
I'm pretty sure thought I was some old dude when I was emailing him until we
thought
got in our first Discord. Like, he was, I almost wanted to say he was like referring to me as like Mr. Troba. But like
so
Sim, I knew Sim for a while. I knew the circle he came from, and everyone who comes out of that circle is super hardworking. But I knew him, like he in particular was, and I also knew everyone else on our team. I mean, like, never teamed with Justin, but I played against him a lot. Teamed with both of our Adams, so for me it was a no-brainer. I was like, personality-wise, this kid works.
Yeah, it's all about putting in the work. Like, when I first met Asim, like, I wasn't sure. Like, I knew he was on FaZe the year before, and they'd had
that
some
was his
success.
first year playing.
Yeah,
He'd be really good on this, by the way. You guys should drag him on here. He's really good at talking.
He's definitely one of the talkers on the team.
He's on the short list because when I met him, we were shooting like we were kind of like skidding his video, and it was just real lighthearted and cool, and he was just super chill and very engaged and excited, and like telling me his history, coming from Crowder's sub 8s or whatever they were playing to like where he is now, and his story is just really cool. And he does have that really like positive outlook, and even like hearing you, Jake, talk about his work ethic and the vibes that he brings to the team. Like, there are certain players out there who are very good, but they also bring like another aspect that some others don't, and that's the vibes, and that's that mentality that he has.
The thing is a lot of players who are known as vibey players, like,
they're too
have
chill.
this connotation of them not being good, or like, being too chill, so they get picked up for vibes, but like maybe they're not that skilled. Sim like has this ridiculous work ethic where it might not show on the scoreboard, but the kid is good.
Dude.
And he has no problem. He has no problem with it being that way. Like, he is all about winning. Which I respect more than anything, because like that was me when I played. And so like the fact that he does it and does it way better than I did is like awesome.
Yeah, he has such a good
Talk a little bit more about that dynamic, especially for people that listen to the podcast that might be new to competitive COD and that are looking at just KD stats and whatnot. Talk a little bit about his role and how that fits with the team and why stats are lower for what he does.
Yeah, for a lot of the season, Sim was running our smoke, which meant that he didn't have a stun or flash. So that alone is like selfless. In the beginning of the season, he was constantly sliding first into every hill. So he was the one going in, getting a kill and dying, or going in and putting someone weak and dying, so everyone else on our team could open the map up. He was running bomb and search until we switched that up. So now everyone sort of takes it just so it's less obvious what we're doing. But when it's most evident is when we're talking about this type of stuff. All right, who's going to run bomb? All right, who wants to run smoke? All right, who wants to be the entry player? He's always like, I got it. Like, let's do it. I got it. I got it. But in terms of like COD technicals, he has no problem being baited by the person behind him. If he has no problem rotating and taking himself out of the play, where he won't see a person for 20 seconds, but he knows that his goal is to go get the new spawns for the team, and he loves it.
There's a distinct example I can think of from this last week, and I can't remember who the Domination was against, but it was on Hackney Yard, and Asim was like 9-16 or something like that. And I think I saw someone at our watch party type like they called it out, and in my head I'm like, well, think about it. Asim has a sub. He's trying to run to the other side of the map to probably flip a spawn or flip something out and make a play to be that guy that changes the game essentially. And yeah, it's repetition. He's running into the L trigger of an AR player most likely, but that there's that one time that he finally gets through, and maybe that play nets us 10 extra points just because he repeatedly knocked on the door, and then finally broke through. So even though his KD doesn't look very good on the scoreboard, he's making the impactful plays that help the team win.
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, there's obviously instances where it could just straight up be a bad game.
Yeah. 100%. We're not saying he never has bad games.
Yeah. You can't just brush every bad performance someone has under the rug and be like, oh, they were playing objective. But more often than not, if he's negative, there's probably a reason.
And that's. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just got excited.
Oh, no, you're good. I talk too much anyway.
So do I. It's a problem. I'm trying to fix it. But like I think that's another important call out too for the mini map. When talking to Brett, because you and the three of us, like the coaches and me, we're so like in the fishbowl of Call of Duty. We know what we're looking for. We know what we're looking at when we're watching these competitive games. And I still remember the time where Brett was like, he finally realized that the reason they show like the mini map at all times is because you're kind of seeing the strategy that the teams are doing based on those arrows, and they do have numbers that associate. So I do love watching on my. I love that it's on YouTube. I just throw it up on the big screen and I look at Asim's arrow and I'm looking what he's trying to do every time. I think that's something that is a good call out. Like if you guys are wondering like what is actually going on here, like pay attention to the mini map and see like what the players are doing, because it's not just about loading into the map and getting more kills and hoping you win. It's a whole other like separate layer of gameplay happening.
Yeah, totally. And I think we've started to give Sim his props and like explained how important he is for us. I mean, like, look, he was literally fasting all last week right before tournament, and he was getting on every day with probably the most energy, hyping everyone up. So the fact that this kid was like malnourished and actively hyping everyone up is awesome. But I think we also need to give a lot of credit to Silly.
Yes.
He's taken the smoke trophy role now. He's throwing those smokes that Sim was throwing. Justin is just as selfless as Sim, and they sort of take turns running the same roles. And like, we've given Sim a lot of props, so I want to throw in that we got to hype up Justin as well, because that dude is just as selfless. Him and Sim together, like, if there was ever a situation where we want two people alive to go and use teamwork to win a round, like we want Sim and Justin.
I mean, it's funny with Justin too, because he used to be a very, kill hungry player. And I think like the past like 3-4 years, just like with the teams he's been on, he's kind of been forced into the role where he has to be selfless. And like, even though it's like never what he wanted to do, he's just always been the one person on the team who's accommodating. He's like, all right, dude, like, fuck it, like,
fine, I'll do it. I think also, since he agrees to doing it, but he knows he can slay out, you see instances in Sparks where when given the opportunity, when given the freedom on the map, he'll just pop off. Yes. And our team respects that. And when Justin's going in, like everyone's like, all right, we're sliding in front of Justin. Like, we'll bait for you. Like, keep doing you, brother.
When he's fine, you just let him rock.
So Justin has that sort of it factor where he's doing, the selfless work, but then like if he starts getting on a streak, everyone's like, oh, all right, this is slay Justin, like get out of his way and let him do his thing, which I think is unique to him. So
yeah, it's evident because I mean you do see Asim have these crazy like moments, especially in Search. I think back to that. I think it was was it against Paris? It was gun runner search, and he was just 12 kills by the 4th round or something like that. It was insane. And like they do have their moments, like, and Silly, I've noticed, and even with online play, for those of you that don't know, he's back in Las Vegas right now. I believe he may be coming back to Minnesota shortly, to play, remotely here with the team. But he's on West Coast host, or server, or I'm butchering the terminology, but he's farther away basically from our people, and it makes online competition tough for him. But regardless of that, he's still been playing like really well. And as a content-focused person, I just want to give a massive shout out to Justin, aka Silly,
He's great.
for
Yeah,
grinding
he is
his
the brand, the
stream.
man right now.
Yes, he's grinding his stream. It's working out. He's nasty at Warzone. Here's a quick embarrassing story. I went into his Twitch chat yesterday while he was offline because he has commands for his classes for whatever he uses. So I'm like typing the commands, and I actually X'd out, so I'm doing like 5 times, and he I guess he got on and saw that I was like alone in his chat getting his classes. He's like, tweeting me, he's like, "You like them classes?" So whatever Silly uses, I use.
I saw that Twitter exchange, Ashley. I needed a little help translating it.
Justin texted me a picture, and he
has a picture of it.
he texted me a picture of the Twitch chat and was like, I mean, like, she could have asked me.
No, I don't want to bother him. I already bothered him enough, dude. I was like, I just need the classes, man. I just need to know.
That's so funny. Brett, I think you were going to ask something before we started talking about Justin.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to expand on what Ashley was talking about, sort of for the noobs out there that are looking at how to watch and understand the game a little bit better. Earlier in the season, you guys spent some time with me, educating me. After launch weekend, I went to the coaches, was like, all right, you guys got to help me understand this, because like it was driving me crazy. Like I was so into it, but I didn't know what was happening. I mean, look, obviously, like, okay, when we kill somebody, that's good, and when our guys die, that's bad. Like, yep, got that. Okay, when we're in the hard point, that's good, right? But the nuance of it was something that I like, just at my core, I was like, all right, if I'm going to be this into each of these matches all season, like I gotta know what's happening better than I do. And one of the things, Jake, that you said that really like changed the way that I watched it, to Ashley's point on watching the mini map, was, watch the 2 arrows that are off by themselves going towards the next hill. And that's the key thing to watch. And like ever since then, I mean, I honestly, like, I'll watch the mini map more than I will the actual gameplay more often than not.
Basically a pro now.
Yeah.
I think, go, Bri.
The mini map's like the subtitles for a movie. I feel like
the mini map for me, is your mirrors when you're driving.
Yes.
Like when you're playing COD, you should be looking at your mini map like every 5 seconds. Like it like you're looking at your mirror. Like that's how I would always explain it to my teammates when I felt like we were having mini map issues when I was competing. But that story you told, I think it was awesome, because after Minnesota we broke it down and like had a conversation, and then the next event you came with a completely more in-depth question that showed that like you were super hyper looking at these rotation gunfights, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like he got it. I don't know, it was just one of those like, oh, that's a cool, like that's a good question moment. So shout out to you.
No, thanks. The funny thing is, so I worked in the NFL before this, and I was in the business and marketing side there as well. So I was, certainly not coaching or, in any respect of that nature. But when I worked at the NFL, I worked game days in their officiating department, and I felt like I understand the game of football, probably as well as anybody that's never played or coached it. So like I understand what's going on when I watch it. And then when I started watching this, it's just like, oh man, I need to understand it better than I do, or my head is just going to explode trying to watch what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll just quickly say I think the casters do a pretty good job of laying those things out. But if you're just coming in and you're hearing and they're rotating to the blah blah blah, and you're just like, wait, what? And what I find with people, and maybe this is a case with Brett as well. I mean, obviously it's different because you're very closely involved with the team who's playing. But that time, that moment when the viewers are watching and then they realize that there is this other kind of meta thing happening, there's a deeper layer to just get the kills and get on the hard point. That's when it kind of becomes like, it just becomes more interesting. And then you have all the banter that happens on Twitter and online. Like this, I'm a stand for competitive Call of Duty. I'm always gonna love it. But I think that's one of the coolest factors is when people start getting into it and they see, oh, there's more than just like pew pew pew. Like it's a strategic game with one of the most popular FPS of all times. It's pretty nutty when you think about it.
Yeah, one of the things that I was that the coaches helped me understand was the swings in hardpoint, right? Of going hill to hill, and why win a game might not look close on the scoreboard, but really is close. But I'll admit that the game mode that I've had the hardest time sort of wrapping my head around, in terms of the strategy that goes into it, is Domination. And I felt like, I mean, there were some super close matches this past weekend.
Yes.
Obviously, Brian and Jake, without like giving away our strategies, right? Could you give the coach's perspective on how you approach that game mode and what you look at from a strategy standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's mostly about communicating where the other team's gonna spawn and where we're spawning. A lot of times people look at Domination and be like, wow, that team got bailed out, they spawn behind the other team, et cetera, et cetera. But like I'd probably say 90% of the time with us, personally, like we know when the other team's spawning there. And even in the flow of the game, it's definitely a lot harder to keep track of, but all those plays go into making a team spawn in X spot, and a lot of the pro teams know that they're going to spawn out behind them the majority of the time, even though a lot of the fans say, oh, this team got bailed out because of this spawn.
Right, and I think a lot of the fans say that because earlier in the season, maybe like 2-3 events ago, even two, like teams didn't know that. Some
Yeah.
did. So
This
some,
is a
I mean,
new-
some, yeah, like some teams had great spawn awareness, but others, and the majority of them did not, especially in Domination. So, um, for the people playing the game, they were like, "This spawn doesn't make sense. Why did they spawn there? Domination spawns are unpredictable." And then I think like maybe 2 events ago, people said to themselves, "All right, well, this clearly isn't going to get fixed, so let's figure it out instead of complain about it." And it's caused teams to get better at Dom, much, much, much better at Dom. And it's caused for closer games, which I think we've seen on the broadcast. I mean, now it's still sort of hard to figure out what's going on in Dom just because of the flag neutralizations and some stuff like that. But at least the viewers are getting closer games.
Plus, I'm not very good at math, so that makes it. I'm just kidding, but
Neither are most of the players on our team.
yeah.
Yeah,
so
we
like,
only
wait,
have
did
2
we win?
players who are allowed to do the math in game. Actually,
Can I
one.
guess? Is it?
Wait, it's just one.
Is it Justin?
Yeah.
Okay, he's on it. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot to say about Domination as a game mode. I've already said my piece on social media throughout the year. I don't think it is the optimal competitive game mode, but I think it's a good point because I have seen, at the beginning of the year, it's like, oh, we have Dom, like, it's too bad we don't have like a better kind of third mode for competitive. But when you look at it, like Dom is one of the most popular pub game modes. However,
Yeah.
the ease of understanding it when you're playing online with your buddies versus watching it competitively, it's almost like watching two different things. Like there's a lot going on, there's a lot to unpack. And I think to your point at the beginning of the year, people were like, oh, or even the casters will say like, oh, they got spawn blessed or something like that. It's random. But now that teams have put the effort into figuring it out and trying to gain understanding of, okay, if we do this, it's intentional, or, oh, this happened, so now we know we're going to spawn here. I think that's, important to call it. And I have seen the dominations get closer. It seemed like, every team, as it goes back to the beginning, caught up a little bit. Do you think that's fair to say as far as like Dom awareness?
Yeah, 1000%. I think
100%.
Hardpoint, Dom, and even S&D, a lot of teams are getting on the same wavelength in terms of a lot of things. S&Ds, the kind of one-offies are like spawns or anything to learn is kind of you playing your own game.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we practice, the coaches are in Codcaster, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised it took some teams as long as it did for them to catch up, because a couple teams found out how to play really early. And then for Search and Ashoy, I mean, like, we were students. I mean, it was one of our worst game types, so we had to learn how to play Search for better or for worse, and so we had, gameplay on that too from VOD and events. So I think teams are definitely catching up. We've caught up we've caught up with what we were bad at, and a lot of other teams have done the same. So.
And this, I kind of mentioned like in the last, last tournament, you had 4 or 3 teams from the bottom half of the league standings in top 4 in semifinals, essentially. Do we think that it's now going to be just a game of like catch up, stay ahead? Was it always like that, or does online kind of make that a little bit more intense, especially going into the last half of the season here?
We feel good about where we're at right now.
Agreed.
I think we can definitely maintain and improve on where we are, and with how the gap kind of was, it's gonna be hard for a lot of these teams lower on the totem pole to catch up. It's basically gonna take event wins at this point.
Yep. I mean, think about it. Like, yes, they've gotten to a level where they can compete with just about anyone, but I mean, everyone's at that level. So now COD's sort of more day to day than it ever has been. And sort of what you said, is it going to be this continuous, like, sort of cyclical, like, improve, everyone catches up, improve, everyone catches up? Yes, but at the same time, everyone was able to catch up because there was no meta change. So like spawns haven't changed. There's been no shift in weapons, which is like unheard of in Call of Duty.
They have not updated the weapons barely at all.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you somehow see a meta shift, or they get on one day and release patch notes that spawns have been altered, you're going to see an entirely different learning curve, and new teams are going to get ahead. Maybe it's the same 3-4 teams that were ahead in the beginning of the game. Maybe a different set come out and learn it quicker. But right now, we're sort of playing this meta that's been played for so many months. It just allows you to catch up.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes a ton of sense. So I know we're at time, so I appreciate you guys' time this morning, Brett as well. Just real quick, I know, so we're coming off of a top 6 placement at Florida, but we play, I think around the time this comes out, it'll be almost a week away. We're going to be playing in this, is it Seattle home series?
Yes.
Yep.
Give us a quick hot take of who's in our group for that tournament, and how are we feeling as a team rebounding off this last weekend, because I think we could all agree, like, we could do way better than what we just showed, and I think we will. But I just want to hear your guys' take on how the first impression of who we play next will go.
Yeah, our group's definitely not too easy next weekend. I think our groups for the rest of the year are actually pretty stacked for the most part. I mean, we have Chicago, who's coming in with a bit of a new look, which should give them new life. They've been playing with General, so it looks like he's going to be the one playing with them.
Do you think they've improved with that change?
We haven't played them at all. We haven't played them at all. I can't see how it would improve them drastically, but you never know. Just sometimes bringing in a fresh face gives teams new life. I mean, we have Optic, who we play first, who probably should have won the last tournament, and then we have Paris, who's a team who's been in our groups a lot this year.
Nice, man. So we're gonna be ready to rumble. I think. Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, Optic definitely looked a lot better. Win it. I mean, you guys have lots of reasons to win it, but win it for me, man. Come on, do it for me. Appreciate it.
Win it for Jake's birthday too.
Yeah, please give me a birthday dub.
Is next weekend your B-day?
My birthday is in 5 days. It's the 18th.
Oh, heck yeah. Okay. I'm going to write that on my calendar.
What birthday is that for you?
24. I'm getting up there.
Okay, don't say that, because me and Brett are both much older than that. So.
See, I feel like every birthday or every time around this year, I say the same thing. Like, I feel the same way I did when I was like 20 years old. I feel like I'm never, like, that's never gonna leave. Like, I feel you guys probably feel the same way.
No.
Like, you become wiser and you learn more, but like.
I'm telling you, you're about to hit your stride. That's what happened to me. I hit mid-20s. I was pretty immature, and then I like hit a stride where I was like, "Oh, this is not the way I should do it. I should do it this way. It's way easier, way better." Like you're gonna
I like
start
that.
to, yeah, you're gonna improve in the later half of your 20s. So there's a tipping point. I don't know if
Nice.
it's gonna be 24, 25 for you, but it's 25 for me.
Self-improvement season. I hope it's 24 for me.
Me too. All right. Well, thank you
It's,
guys.
it's always self-improvement season. You never
Yes,
get,
sir.
never get too old or too whatever to keep getting better.
Yes.
Amen.
You're about to hit
You
the
know, one
fast
thing
one.
that I find pretty interesting, and Brian alluded to it, looking at the standings, right? And I think the points, it seemed like early in the season, people weren't really that focused. And when I say people, I mean sort of like fans in the media weren't really that focused on the points or what they would mean. But now that we're halfway through the season, I think it's going to start to be more of a conversation looking at that. And even this past tournament was really interesting from the standpoint that obviously, our least successful tournament in terms of placing, but we actually moved up
Yeah, still
in the standings
advanced
relative
us.
to other teams because we were tied with Florida. We beat them. They went 0-2. All the other teams besides FaZe that were in the Final Four were down further in the standings. So we actually helped ourselves relative to other teams points wise. And it'll be interesting to watch that race for points where it'll be, I really see it being a dogfight for those top 4 spots are going to be so important the way the playoffs are structured.
I mean, it's going to be crazy for us. In 2 of our last 3 tournaments, we have both FaZe and Dallas in our pool. So all 3 of us are in the same pool at 2 of our last 3 events.
It's gonna be a fight, dude.
Yep. Yeah, those top 2 get a big advantage, and the top 4 get a big advantage.
I know you guys will keep fighting though. I have faith. I think, we keep winning a couple matches every week, and maybe we steal one on the way, and we're like right there, man.
Oh, we're confident.
Yeah.
Yeah, we feel good.
Yeah, we feel good. I think like that top 6 finish, I think lit a fire, man.
Yeah, they were like, "Hold up, this ain't us." That's how I felt too. I mean, and it's crazy too. Just to kind of put a bow on this episode, when the team got announced, I think we were all there. We saw like the public perception. We saw the preseason power rankings, and to watch us steadily climb those expectations to the point where now I believe there is an expectation, because we did have 2 grand finals in a row. There is an expectation of like, hold up, like we could win this, dude, like let's go. And I feel like that since we're so close there, we're at that cusp. I think maybe this last weekend, although good news, we did beat Florida in a head-to-head direct match, so we technically like secured top 4 in the standings. So that's the good news from the weekend. But we didn't climb much more other than that. So I'm excited to see us, now that the fire is lit even more than it was already, to see where we go now. And I'm excited for the next tournament. So anyway, I appreciate you guys coming on. Like I said, I appreciate you guys making time for me and Brett. And also, if you're listening, thank you for your time. Time is the most valuable currency. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We have a link to an Anchor that shows you even more places to listen to the podcast. Or if you're on our YouTube, hello, this is our faces. You just saw for like an hour. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, smack the like, all that YouTuber stuff. And yeah, that's about it. Gonna hit you with the outro music now.